Have you ever found that sometimes you just fly off the handle, you lose it, you get so angry and frustrated, especially maybe with your loved ones, and it just came out of nowhere. You don't know why. Well, I found that the more we come to understand the way we experience feelings, the less often that happens, and the more possible it is for us to be patient, especially with our loved ones, the way we would like to be. And it's been a pattern that I have seen with all of my clients who've worked with me over the years, as they have also come to understand. And it boils down to feelings coming from thought in the moment. When they understand the implications of that, that they cease to find themselves flying off the handle quite as often. Doesn't mean we're perfect. Even I have my moments sometimes still, but at least it's not something that is bothering us over and over again. So there was a time when I really, really struggled with this. I really struggled. Everything felt so frustrating, and I was not in a very good place at all. It didn't matter what my kids did or what anyone did. It just felt unfair, or things would just come to the surface so quickly and I would snap. And I hated it because I knew that it wasn't how I wanted to be, how I wanted to be with my kids, how I wanted to be in my relationships. But it seemed like it was out of my control, that there was nothing I could do about it. So I actually went on a journey where I gradually started to understand more about my human experience, and then actually get to a space where that didn't happen anymore. My first step in that journey was doing parenting by connection, which is what peaceful parenting is based on. And understanding that a lot of those feelings that come really rapidly from out of the blue are coming from what we call in parenting by connection re-stimulation. Other people might call them triggers, and generally comes from experiences that we've had when we were a child or when we were younger, that have been sort of left there unresolved. So let me give you an example that might make a bit of sense to you. I'm going to think of one that relates to myself so that this makes sense. One of the thinking patterns or beliefs that I had that carried over from childhood was that I'm not good enough, that nothing I do is ever good enough. And that came from my childlike experiences where I've interpreted the reactions from the adults around me to meaning that what I was doing or how I was showing up as a kid wasn't good enough. And then what tends to happen as we go through life is we continue to accumulate all this evidence that supports the fact that we're not good enough. And we carry that into adulthood. And so in adulthood, we're walking around with this sort of subconscious belief we're not good enough. It's not there in the forefront of our mind. And I certainly was the sort of adult that was very busy, very motivated, achieving a lot of things. So I certainly wasn't showing up as somebody who was hiding away and feeling badly about myself. But if somebody challenged me or criticized me, or even maybe they weren't even criticizing, they were trying to give me advice on how to do something better, the feelings would come rushing to the surface. And it didn't come forward, or I didn't recognize it as I'm not good enough. I sort of recognized it as, how dare they? I've tried so hard, nothing's ever good enough for anybody, and all this kind of angry thinking to the surface that would come very rapidly. And and result in me feeling really angry. Now, sometimes it would lead to flying off the handle. It depends on where I was. So sometimes it might be flying off the handle, or other times it might be like an internal simmer, and that would come more out like a passive aggressive sort of reaction. So not really like flying off the handle, but still behaving in a particularly childlike manner as an adult, really. And after having what we call listening time in parenting by connection, I could actually start to see that that's what was going on. It was the kind of thinking pattern around, I'm not good enough. And so if anybody was doing or saying something that seemed like they were agreeing that I'm not good enough, then that's when those feelings came to the surface. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have exactly the same kind of thing going on. I'm just sharing that this is an example of one of the ways it showed up for me. So what was the resolution of that? You'd think that the resolution of that would be then to tackle, and a lot of therapies or counseling or psychology techniques involve going back to the source of that and resolving what happened back then so that it all fixes now. And I did a lot of that work, and I did manage to shift some of it, and it did work to a degree. It was hard work. It was very emotional work. And sometimes if I had a session working on these things, it was really, really hard to come back and be a parent and being really connecting with the kids and fulfilling the kids' needs. I really felt like I needed more processing time. And so it was a very hard way of going about it. When I came across the inside out paradigm and started learning that feelings come from thought in the moment, as my understanding of that grew deeper, I came to see that in those moments, what was happening, what I was experiencing, was actually my own thinking. It wasn't the people and what they were saying. It was my own thoughts. And the more I came to see that, the less powerful those thoughts were. So thoughts don't actually have power. We're the ones that give them the power over us. We're the ones that put the story into them and the ones that gives life to them. Usually thoughts just pass. But the more you can see that that's the way it works, the more those thoughts pass without taking an effect or taking hold. And actually, it was quite interesting that a key shift for me or a key breakthrough for me was when I came to understand separate realities, and particularly an incident with my mum where we had an argument, and in that argument my mum was describing who she thought I was. I mean, she wasn't saying, oh, I think you're this. It was just coming out in her frustration that she was feeling towards me in that time. And as I listened, I thought, I don't even recognize this person that she's describing. I mean, that doesn't even feel like me or seem like me. And yes, subhanAllah, in that moment, I saw the separate realities, and I saw that, hang on a minute, with my mum, if she's filtering everything I say and do through that lens that she's looking at, then nothing I ever do will be good enough. And interestingly, the need to prove to myself or anyone that I am good enough, or the thinking I had around whether I am good enough or not, that fell away in that moment. And it ceased to ever raise its head again. You know, I'm not triggered by that anymore, re-stimulated by that anymore. That insight in that moment, because, you know, often these things come from our parents. Not saying our parents were bad people, but as kids, we've interpreted the things they've said or the way they've behaved towards us in our own childlike way. And if we've carried that belief into adulthood, that's when it starts causing us grief, because it's actually childlike thinking as an adult, right? So that childlike thinking fell away. And that gave me the opportunity now to, when I hear somebody criticize me or judge me or give me advice, that I'm actually able to listen without actually having an emotional reaction. So I don't fly off the handle anymore, or I don't get passive aggressive and that sort of thing anymore. I actually find myself hearing what they're saying. And what's beautiful about that is I can actually see their perspective. And if there is some truth to what they're saying, it gives me an opportunity to improve on myself without feeling judged or without my ego getting involved. If what they're saying I can see isn't true, it's just their perspective or how they see things, I don't have to take it seriously, but I can still respect that that's their opinion and that's the way it is. And so what happens is we become effortlessly patient. We don't need to try and be patient. We don't need to try and analyze or critique what they've said or do positive affirmations to counter what they've said. We just don't take what they've said into our heart, and we're able to look at it objectively. And this is really the way we're meant to be as human beings, is we hear what the people say, we look for the truth in it. If there's truth in it, we look at whether there's something we need to do with that or not. And if it's just their reality and we don't see that it fits with our reality, we don't have to take it on board, subhanAllah. And it makes life so much easier to manage. So I'd like to invite you to share with me what your takeaways are in the comments. Share with me what you took from that. Share with me your challenges with that. Share with me your questions around that. And inshallah, I'll try my best to answer them. So we have some people here. I see Sarah is here. Assalamu alaikum. Mahmouda is here. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Do you have any takeaways or questions around what I just shared? Because it is something that we often struggle with, is being patient and not losing it at the ones we love in those moments. Yours may not be around what I was talking about in terms of not feeling good enough and criticism and judgment. It might be around something else. You know, I've worked with a lot of people where their issue is around everything being neat and tidy in order. And so when there's people messing up that order for them, that's when they lose it. So share with me the times that you struggle to not lose it. Share with me where you find it challenging, and share with me what you took away. Inshallah.